Good morning, Don Pelayo checking in with you guys this morning. I'm out here in my car at 7:30 in the morning. I'm traveled over here to visit my parents this morning. I'm waiting a little bit longer. I usually show up Sunday mornings kind of early at their home. I usually get to their house about 8 o'clock. They only live about 30 minutes away from me, so I'm over here in their town, just hanging out in the shopping center parking lot, waiting to go over to their house. But we had a little bit of the storms. There's been some storms passing through the southeast. We just had some wind and a little bit of sprinkling rain here. Not nothing much, but I could hear the wind last night. I think the wind gusts were pretty substantial last night. Um, I I am feeling a lot better. Saturday I had a much better day than I did Friday. I'm feeling a lot more chipper and like my usual self. I don't know what was wrong with me Friday. I think just the whole day just kind of got off to a bad start, and I'm feeling better now. Um, I had kind of set some goals for myself, weekly goals in terms of my side hustle, and last week I didn't. I'm not going to quite hit it for this past week. I just, sometimes with door dashing, it's like you kind of you get going for a while, and I did 2 weeks in a row where I was doing really well, and then you kind of feel a little burned out on it, and it's like I just, a couple of evenings I took off last week and didn't even go, and then Friday night I was really grouchy and grumpy, and I think I did 1 or 2 dashes, and then I went home, and it's like Friday night's one of the big nights. That's usually when I'm make a big chunk of my money. Friday nights and Saturdays. Saturday I did well. I think I actually exceeded my goal yesterday, so I was feeling much better yesterday. um, I'm really starting to feel my age. I'm 48 and a half. I'll be 49 in August. I'm thinking a lot more about, and I don't want to sound like morbid or anything like that, but I'm really thinking about what I want to leave behind for my kids. I've been thinking a lot more. 5 years ago, I was thinking all about retirement and moving to Spain and living over there for a while and retire. I'm not thinking that way anymore. My whole mindset has changed. I think part of it's just that I'm seeing the dark clouds of the economic problems that we're having here in the United States, and I want to leave my kids in as best a position as I possibly can. So one of the goals that I've set for myself, and it's a pretty substantial goal, is that I would like to leave each of my daughters $1 million. Now, of course, dollars are not what they used to be, and by the time I pass away, they're not. It's going to be even worth less. But that's part of one of my big financial goals, is to leave both of my kids $1 million in assets, whether that be cash, real estate, mutual funds, traditional investments. Some of that will probably come from life insurance. I have a policy on myself right now that I need, but it was a 20-year term that I took out in 2012, so it's getting ready to, in 2032 it'll be done. I'd like to go ahead and get a new policy before I turn 50. Something that will last through my life expectancy. And so I think that'll probably be half of it, because I'm planning on taking out like $1 million life insurance policy. And then I figure I'll have $1 million life insurance policy. I'll leave my house, which I expect my house value probably by the time I die to be maybe 300, 350, something like that. And then, so then I just need to leave another $650,000 in investments behind. I used to think about retiring at 58. I was even thinking about retiring at 58 there for a little while. Could I do it? Would it be possible? And now I'm thinking I'm just going to work as long as I possibly can so that I can leave as much as I can to my kids. And I'm kind of very much in that mindset right now. I feel like the United States is really deteriorating, and I think it's worse than they're telling us. Um, I'm actually really kind of becoming more and more concerned about that. Um, we've got to get, and I think Trump is trying to do some things about the deficits and the debt, trying to cut our spending. We've got to fix that problem like now before this debt becomes a bigger problem. We've got to get first thing we got to do is eliminate the deficits. We're running big annual deficits, and then once we've gotten to a balanced budget, then we need to start working on paying off this debt, because these interest payments that are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and more of our tax dollars are having to go to satisfy that. It won't be long, and we're not going to have money for Medicare and Medicaid. The government's not going to have it. It's going to have to throw every dime it gets to paying the interest payments on the debt that we have. I can't. I have to imagine that taxes are going to go up in the future. I just, without some major changes in government spending. So I'm anticipating higher taxes in the future. I just don't see a way out of that. Government benefits and things are probably going to have to get scaled back at some point. I think we can fix it now if we really start clamping down and making cuts, in some of these big areas. I think military spending is going to have to be cut. I think just until we can get these deficits eliminated and begin paying down this debt. These Democrats think we can just keep spending and spending like we've been, and it's like, people, we can't do this. we're bankrupting the country is what we're doing. This massive government spending. It's like we just can't afford it. We're doing is just building a bigger and bigger mess. By doing that. So federal government spending is going to have to come way down. Taxes are probably going to go up, and Trump's going to be in office for the next 4 years. I think some of the things he's doing is good, but the problem is so enormous. It's going to take more than 4 years to fix it. And I'm just really concerned about the problem in our country is like we have these two political parties, and it's almost like they trade off each time, and they undo what the last party did, and it's like we just can't seem to get anywhere. China has one political party, the Chinese Communist Party, and they have common goals, and they just continue to move towards their goals with one party. And that, I think that's even though, when you have sole political power like that, there's always going to be abuses. I think there's a lot of abuse in their system, but there are some benefits to that system as well, in that you don't get off course. You continue working, and the Chinese have a long viewpoint where they're looking at 50, 100, 500 years even down the road. Whereas here it's like we're looking every 4 years, we gotta make some changes here in the United States. I'm not saying that we change our political system. I do think maybe it would help if we had additional political parties, had, not just two, but we had multiple, kind of the way they do in Europe. But but all of our political parties need to agree that the debt is becoming a national security problem. I mean, this is becoming a threat to our country, the debt. Um, I'd really like to see our politicians address it that way. Now, the Democrats are going to say, well, we need to hike taxes. And honestly, um, there's always a trade-off with that. You know, if you raise taxes too much, then you can kind of scare away or diminish growth in the country. Typically either Republicans like to cut taxes because that spurs economic growth. You raise taxes, you get a little less growth. You don't have as many companies moving here to set up shop for new jobs, things like that. Honestly, the more I look at it, I feel like they're probably going to have to redo taxes, probably more on the higher end of the scale, because there's the people at the bottom, they just don't have any disposable income. They're trying to make ends meet as it is. The upper end of things, we're probably going to have to see taxes go up. So I expect to see that in the future. Probably not under the Trump administration, but I think in the next 10 to 15 years, you're going to see that start to happen, where they're going to be raising those top tax rates are going to go up. They're going to probably close more loopholes. Putting additional taxes on corporations doesn't really work very well, because all the corporations do is just pass that on to consumers. They're not really paying it. They just add it to the price of the product they sell. It's just a part of cost of goods sold. So, that doesn't really work, because that then, less, that price gets passed on to the lower classes that are buying the products. So I think really where it needs to be put, where the higher taxes need to be imposed on, higher individual and income tax rates. Right now I think the top tax rate is what, 39%, 36%, something like that. I'm not a real big fan of it. I'm really not. I'm not a big fan of raising the taxes. I'm not a real big fan of the progressive tax, because it feels like you're punishing people for being successful. To a Republican, it feels like you're punishing people for being successful, for going out and working hard and making something of themselves. Building something, and it feels like you're punishing them for that. So I don't like that, but I also really don't like this debt, and the debt's getting scary. It's becoming a real scary issue, and I think that both sides are going to have to do things that they don't really like, and the Republicans are not going to like the higher taxes. The Democrats are not going to like the cuts to government spending. So, and I think both are necessary. So that's where we're at right now. I'm just my thoughts this morning. We got to think about our children and our grandchildren, their futures, and stop thinking so short term here in the United States. So hope everybody has a great day. I'm going to go over to my parents' house here in just a moment and see how they're doing, and look forward to hearing from you.